Welcome back, everybody, to the Registered Nerd Podcast for episode 11. Today, we're going to talk about Avengers Endgame. We all have just seen it, and I'm going to ask everybody what your initial impressions are. I thought it was pretty amazing. Like 9 out of 10 would see again.
Yeah, definitely. I would say I would give it a 9. It was better than I expected it to be, and I think part of that was just because lately there's been so much disappointment with media that my bar has been set a little bit low, but like I was entertained the entire time. I was never angry, I was never bored. I was like this is really fun. This is how going to movies should be.
Oh, I should probably have introduced everybody.
We're all the same people. We have Snacks, Webbed, Guilty Spark, which is me, and I always forget your handle.
I don't have a handle. You can just call me my name. It's basically a handle.
I know. I campaigned for names this season, but nobody went along with it. We have Carrie along with us today. And Carrie's the drunk one. Snacks isn't even drunk. Neither is Webbed.
Yet. How do you know?
I mean,
Oh, no, you're not with me.
I guess I'm making a lot of assumptions, but
I'm working on it.
I might be going to grab another beer in a second here. We'll see.
Fair enough.
I thought it was really good, and normally I don't like time plots, but this one they implemented really well. It took me about halfway through the movie to really sell me on it, the time plot, but I did enjoy it.
Well, it wasn't just, and you're right, time travel plots can be really messy, and it wasn't just that this was a successful time travel plot. It was it it was like 3 time travel plots. You had
Hold on, I
spoilers.
still think we needed Chris's impression before you started.
Yeah, so I'll interject real quick because I do want to say something about I do have an issue with the time travel thing a little bit. But I can talk about that later. Overall, I did think that the movie was pretty good. I actually was surprised at who they killed off. As far as like Iron Man and Captain America, I would have totally bet the other way if I had to put money on it before the movie started. But
Oh, see, I wasn't surprised at all. I knew that just from I mean, it was time for Iron Man. I figured Iron Man would be the one to make the big sacrifice. I also kind of thought Captain America would also make a big sacrifice, but I mean, Captain America's not dead. He's just elderly.
yeah, I know that. I just thought like, especially after they introduced like him having a family and stuff, that maybe they might not kill off Iron Man. They might just have him kind of do what Captain America did, where it's like, I saved the world, now I'm just going to enjoy my family, kind of a
Oh,
thing.
oh no, I saw I mean, I can see why you would think that, but I was positive that he was going to die, and they did it exactly like I thought they did, where his death kind of mirrored Spider-Man disappearing, Peter Parker disappearing in the last film, where this time it's him dying, and their role is kind of reversed. That didn't surprise me, but it was very well done.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying it wasn't well done. It did. I was betting the other way, so I'm not disappointed by that by any means. Their contracts are up, right? Robert Downey Jr. and
Yeah, they're done. They were just done
So-
playing the roles. I mean, they've been doing it for 10 years now. So,
right.
I mean, they have more money than God, so they don't really care.
I mean, it's just part of it is artistic, I'm sure. I mean, the roles have grown. They've played the roles. Their characters have finished their arc, and I mean, at some point you got to know when to walk away. And it seems like they did. I mean, with this film, like this is a great time to kind of end the Thor, Captain America, Iron Man. I mean, because those are the core characters of the original of this Avengers squad.
But they left Thor open to maybe join Guardians of the Galaxy for at least the third movie before he goes
Yeah,
out.
which I kind of like because Ragnarok almost felt like Guardians 3. There was kind of a little ensemble of people, and it was very like space, and it had that humor, and so I think he'll kind of fit right in with that group.
I mean, he did really well with it in Infinity War, so
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. Is they put him with them in Infinity War, and they played off each other quite well.
Yeah, and I wonder if it was the popularity of that dynamic that did that.
I wonder if they do Guardians of the Galaxy 3, if they'll kill Thor off in it.
I mean, they could. He could be because he's not part of that core group. They could have him do some sort of sacrifice, but I don't think they want to take too much away from like Peter and Gamora and the main characters and the Guardians. I think that they've put Thor in the Guardians in the comics before, right?
I
I think
can't attest to that completely,
I think
but
I thought he had like he has a lot of space plots, so I think they've at least interacted. Um, the one thing
I'm sure.
Yeah, since we're talking about Thor and like just minor critiques and things that I didn't really care for, I was talking to Snacks about this right after we saw the film. I thought they played Thor for too much of a laugh. I get that he's like broken, but and he was funny in Ragnarok. He was funny in Infinity War, but I think they took it a little bit too far, where they kind of made him a joke in this movie. And I think he had become kind of this tragic character, which is great. I mean, he's lost almost everything, but he didn't need to be quite that much of a joke.
It was too much of like a personality switch based on what happened to him in the last one.
Well, I think like I think the problem is that his mental state was undercut with fat jokes. Um, like
Yeah,
there's that part in the end, near the end, where he's talking about how he's like, it has to be me to put the gauntlet on, and Stark's like, you're not in any mental state to do it, and he's like, what flows through my veins, and War Machine's like, cheese whiz. And it's like, okay, this is kind of undercutting like a serious moment here,
yeah, that was a little
and
bit too
and that
much.
that part fell flat for me.
Yeah, yeah, it's like even when they went to Asgard, when him and Rocket went to Asgard, I kind of felt like the best moments with Thor were kind of like when he was talking to his mother, and it's because those parts were a little bit more serious. And to me, the humor with him all through the film, like there were a couple times where it was funny, especially the first reveal of he's hanging out in this hut playing video games and drinking, and like has just completely isolated himself. Like that was a little bit of a shock and a little bit funny, but they just took it too far.
When we were watching the movie, I remember Guilty Spark coming, leaning over to me and saying, the worst part about this scene is the fact that everybody thinks that they'll still be playing Fortnite in 5 years.
Yeah, that's the way to date the movie. Like 5 years from now, no one's going to be
Right.
playing Fortnite. So I don't know why. I mean, they probably just put it in there so kids can go, oh, Fortnite, because it's really popular right now. But what a way to date your film. Like you could just put generic Call of Duty in it because all those games look alike, or Battlefield, and it wouldn't have dated the film nearly as much.
I will say the point where Thor wanted to wear the gauntlet, I thought that was the point in the movie where they were going to bring him back out of like his little hobo mode and he was going to become serious again.
Right. Right. Okay, so we talked about general impressions. Why don't we have everybody talk about like their favorite moment from the entire film and their least favorite moment? So Snacks, why don't you start?
Huh. Probably. Uh, honestly, I have like two moments that I really, really enjoyed in the film. The first one was more just a little character moment. Was in the elevator, uh, when they went back to the 2012 or whatever, and Cap's in the elevator with all the Hydra agents, and it's like, oh, he's gonna do the fight thing from uh Winter Soldier, kind of something like that, and then he just whispered the Hail Hydra thing, and then you just see him walking out of there with the briefcase. I was like, oh, that was awesome.
That was great. That was pretty clever. I
Yeah.
All of those callbacks, like the way they interacted with what was going on when they went back in time. I thought like there were a lot of really cool scenes, and it wasn't just like they were there and in the background. Like they kind of played with how they did those interactions. I thought that was really interesting.
And then my other favorite part was, the I am Iron Man thing.
Yeah, that was great. What was your least favorite part?
Um, Probably, I I don't know if it's necessarily considered a scene, but like the concept of how Thanos found out about their plan, that was probably my least favorite part. It felt very contrived to me.
Yeah, I think what was going on there, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Gamora like links into their network. Oh, it not like a hive mind, but I think she can like access the computer and stuff. And I think how they
It's not Gamora, it's Nebula.
I always do that. I always call Nebula Gamora, and I don't know why. But you're right. Thanks, Webbed. Yeah, I think it was the only part that I thought was contrived about that. I was fine, but shouldn't Nebula have known that that would be an issue? Like when she went back, like, oh, they're gonna be
That
able to
was
pick
my
me up.
issue with that. Is I agree with Snacks as far as that was one of my least favorite things. Arguably my least favorite thing, and that's exactly what my issue was with it. It would have been fine if they would have had some sort of further explanation
Right.
about that, and definitely like have some sort of feedback to her too, that there was um, you know someone
Well,
was what's the word I need, like spying on her memories and stuff.
right. I guess I think the way they tried to make that come about is I think maybe it wasn't just that she was in the network. Like maybe she assumed no one would have noticed, but the fact that Nebula in the past, she got hit and was malfunctioning, and I guess maybe that's how they kind of tried to justify it. Like maybe Nebula assumed no one would know, but because of the malfunction of the other Nebula, that's what like brought the information out. I don't know if it's because she just got smashed in the head in that little fight she was in. Well,
Maybe
Webbed, what was your favorite part?
Oh, I mean, I definitely kind of echo Snacks as far as the callbacks to the past. Like, so I have one other issue which I'll talk about in a minute. But when you do a time travel thing, you want to make sure you do some things right, and I think they did a lot of things right when they were in the past, as far as doing callbacks to all the old movies. So it definitely, I mean, it's a little bit of fan service, but they did it right. If you've been a fan of the series all the way through and you know those movies, not necessarily even by heart, but you know those main points of it. You definitely should have picked up on those and kind of had like that's kind of cool.
Well, and this was
Just
the time for it. This was the film to do that kind of a little bit of fan service, nostalgia callback. I mean, that's why I think it was executed so well. If they did
yeah.
that all the time, it would fall flat. But I mean, this is the movie to do it.
Right. Well, they did a little bit of that in the Infinity War movie, in that like a lot of people like ran into each other for the first time and interacted,
That
like
had
Thor
never
with the
interacted.
Guardian.
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool, because I'm sure a lot of people wondered, like, well, obviously at some point everyone's going to meet. How is that all going to go down? And like talking about Thor with the Guardians, like him and Chris Pratt kind of, or Peter Quill, whatever you want to call him, like kind of having that like, well, I'm kind of the alpha male, like
Right.
banter back and forth was kind of like,
It gives
funny.
it gives the writers a lot of breathing room to write for characters that haven't been in situations like they've written Captain America and Tony Stark to death. Like how many times have they interacted? But when you start to have like Captain America interact with Rocket Raccoon or something like that, or Mantis interact with Tony Stark, it really like allows the writers to play, okay, how would these very different characters that have never talked like meet each other? Also, the great thing about Infinity War was we got to see some heroes fight each other, and there's always that playground thing of like who would win, Captain America or Iron Man if they fought, and like that was a little fan servicey, but it is also legitimately kind of cool to see, like even if Iron Man fights Peter Quill just for a minute before they realize like, oh, we're actually on the same side.
Yeah. Um, yeah, like I thought that was cool. Like in Infinity War, like when Rocket chooses to go with Thor instead of with the rest of the Guardians, it kind of, I mean, if you know the series, like he's not really big on confrontation. He kind of is a chicken shit. He likes to run from the fight a little bit, but he also is really into guns. So when he heard he could go to like this armory with Thor and like find some cool shit, like he was like, yeah, man, I want to do that. And then like him and Groot interacting with Thor, like all that was kind of cool. But then the fact that Groot like made the handle for the axe, like then it kind of even like solidified that as like a
Right. It
sensible
was like
option.
it's like it was destiny for Groot to be there.
Yeah, so I mean they've done a good job with all that stuff. So if you want to hear my one big issue, this is where I'm to where I had a problem. So maybe this is because there's a show that I watch on TV a little bit called Manifest. It's a newer show on TV, and the whole concept of it is there's like a time warp thing that happens with these people, and there's a main family in the show who like half of them get like the flight that they're going on is delayed or something, and um, there's not enough seats for all the people, so like half of the family stays back and takes like a free voucher, like basically like a reimbursement on their tickets to stay back and go on a later flight. And the later flight that half of the family goes on gets stuck in like this time warp, and they essentially disappear for 5 years. But for them, which is the 5 year thing was funny to me that this movie also has a 5 year time gap, but um, they disappear for 5 years, and for them it happens in the blink of an eye, and for everyone else, like they've been living for 5 years thinking like the plane went down and everyone's dead.
Right.
um, and that's where my brain was going with this 5 year time gap. So they bring everyone back, like even supposedly everyone else in the world, but there's an issue with that because like you watch this show and you see like what happens to families, like they move on, they meet other people, maybe start a new relationship, like that can kind of really fuck with um, people's lives, you know. So they
Well,
brought everyone back, but they brought them back 5 years into the future, and for the people that were brought back, they didn't realize it's been 5 years. For the
well,
people,
I'm
that,
sure I'm sure that they'll deal with that like in the upcoming films. Like I'm sure Far From Home will deal with that and some of these other
Well,
movies. But I
well,
kind of
we'll
like that they did that because it didn't just like undo everybody's character development. Like it's not like, oh, we're just doing the snap and we're going back and we're starting from scratch and nobody will remember all this and like Tony Stark's daughter will just be erased and all that. I was kind of okay with the way they did that, and it actually does like open up some opportunities for them to kind of show how the people do deal with that in the next couple of films.
yeah, I'm interested to see. I mean, yeah, I mean, obviously they maybe the one that was one of the big reasons they made that choice is Tony Stark's daughter was there, so like going back the 5 years and getting rid of all the things that happened would have gotten rid of that. But like the one big thing on this Manifest show is like in that family, there's twins, and one of them hangs back and the other one goes forward. So like they're fraternal twins. The daughter is like 15 years old, but the son is still 10 years old. And it like totally like what if that happened? Like when he snapped, it doesn't necessarily. It was like an impartial thing. It was just a random chance if you get disintegrated or not. So like, what if that happened to people? Like, so I guess I just had a little bit of issue with that. As much as I guess you have to kind of let it go because it's a superhero movie. In the back of my mind, I was thinking like that's not 100% a solution because that could totally fuck with people's lives.
Right. I think it was just the best option they had because and again, I really am glad they didn't just do the it none of it ever happened story because I think that would have been cheap. And I also did like how characters who died, like because of the Soul Stone, like, the Gamora in the future who uh, who died, like she stays dead. Like we have the new Gamora from the past, who doesn't have that character development. I think that'll be interesting for Guardians 3.
Right.
Um
But the question is, where did she go?
I don't know. They'll catch
well,
up with her
well,
though.
I think as far as the 5 year gap thing, either forward movies from this point forward will address it in each of their own like individual ones,
Right.
or they're just gonna ignore it. Which I mean,
Well, hopefully they do address it a little bit.
I
Even if
hope so.
in some of the films, even if it's a smaller, just a line here or there about like how it affected them, especially the
Yeah.
ones that were dead. I mean, like you got to talk about Peter Parker, how he's got to feel like you're a teenager and you were dead. You've been dead for 5 years and now
Right.
you're back. Like
Well,
what a weird thing.
I'm interested to see like what does Aunt May do, and
Right.
they very well might ignore it, and I guess I can let it go because everything else in the movie was pretty well done. Other than that Nebula thing, that was kind of weird for me. I can
Maybe
kind of.
Nebula grabbed a shuttle. I wonder if maybe Nebula grabbed a shuttle from Thanos' ship.
You mean
You
Gamora?
mean Gamora? I'm talking
Gamora.
about
God
Nebula's
damn it.
brain link thing. Um,
Oh yeah.
um,
So with Nebula's brain link, I'm wondering if since she was like only built by Thanos, and maybe she only thought that her network was only for her and Thanos and didn't think anybody else could be a part of it.
I
So
don't
she would
know.
have no
Like,
idea
again, I
that
think it
anybody
was
else
she
could
was
get
just
into
sharing
it.
information back with the computer, like she had access to that, like it was a network. And when she went back, it like she probably thought like nobody would notice that she was on the network, or but like the fact that like the other one was damaged because it was that hologram that really like the other Nebula didn't just notice like, oh, somebody else is like in here with me. It was when that hologram projected out, it was like a malfunction.
That's what I'm
So
saying. Like they had no idea that something like that could get
right,
inside their
exactly.
own
That, and I
network. They're
think
like it's their own
yeah,
thing. It's their own brain.
yeah.
They would have no idea it's could happen.
Yeah.
Well, I think my favorite part of the movie, and I have two. Number one is when Hawkeye's like right at the beginning, the cold open, when Hawkeye's family disappeared. That was so perfectly done and just made you like that just hit you right in the feels. That was like, oh shit. Like you like for a second you think like, oh, it's just his one daughter, and then he turns back around and it's his entire family. And
I
it's
Did you
just
remember
notice
like,
seeing.
that they filmed it so that he was looking away from each person as they disappeared, so he
yeah,
never really got to see them
he
really
never saw
disintegrate? That I did
when
like
he
that.
yeah, it was perfectly done. When he turns toward his daughter, like you can see the dust like floating away. It's really subtle, but there's just a little bit of the dust like still going. And then like he obviously freaks out and looks there for a second, and then by the time he looks back to where his family was, there was just like nothing out in the field.
I
um
remember saying to Sarah right at the beginning of that, I said, "Oh shit, they went really dark right out the
yeah,
gate."
that was a great cold open to the movie. I mean, I thought that was fantastic. The other part that really got me for like totally different reasons was I really loved when Captain America came out with Thor's hammer. I thought that was great because I've always been in the camp of he can move it, because if you remember in Guardian or not Guardians, if in Avengers 2, they were all having the competition, they were drinking and partying and seeing who could move it. And I always got the feeling there that like Thor looked really nervous when Captain America went to it. And I kind of got the feeling that he was faking that he couldn't pick it up, because it kind of nudged when he touched it and it didn't when anybody else did. So that was a little bit of a like, I've always been on the side of, yeah, Captain America could pick it up and use it. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. So,
That was one of
well,
my favorite parts too.
I liked that. I think they did a lot of good things like that, and we'll see like with the time loop thing. Oh, my other point on that was going to be like again talking about like families and interruption, like Ant-Man just kind of went back to like being with his daughter, who's now like again like 15 instead of 10 or something like that, and kind of acted like it was no big deal. So I kind of am leaning towards like they're just going to kind of ignore it, which whatever, it's fine. I guess you just chalk it up to it's a superhero movie, but I
Well,
still
I'm
just am a little annoyed with it, especially because they said something in the movie, I think, about like, oh, we can't fuck too much with the timeline, blah blah blah, because it'll mess stuff up. So we just have to kind of like make it the best of it. But like Tony Stark kind of still interacted with his dad. Captain America still saw himself, like, and fought himself. So by time travel movie standards, that still should mess with stuff a little bit, shouldn't it? It kind of alters the course of stuff.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
I
the
think it
thing
did,
with.
but in those because of how Thanos jumped forward in time, I'm not really sure. And like I said, time travel plots get messy, and they particularly get messy in this one where they went to four different time periods in the past. But I kind of got the impression of like, how much of the bad stuff in the world was because of Thanos, and now Thanos has jumped to the future. So all of these people like in the past, they're not going to have to deal with Thanos because he's not there because he jumped to the future.
Right.
So like I don't know, maybe they're kind of like, well, it's worth it because yeah, they saw me and stuff, but does it really matter? Because so many of the threats we face like are just going to be erased now.
But that's the problem with the time plots because if Thanos isn't there to make the initial problem, then they don't go back in time
Yeah, you
to.
can't. I mean, now you're
We
getting
we
into
could go into time
causality, and
plots
yeah,
forever.
you can't.
That's my initial
When
problem with them
you
is we
have to
could sit on them
accept a
for a
little bit when
while.
you're talking about a movie, and I mean, they kind of talked about it with like the Infinity Stone. It's that's almost the thing. It's like they're not changing the future, they're changing the present. That's kind of
The
what I got from it. Like all
Yeah.
those other timelines are still going to continue, but by going back, they're taking their present, and that's why they came back to 5 years after. Like they came back to the moment they left because they're not really changing the past; they're changing the present, which is why they have to go back and put the stones back where they found them.
the split
What
reality also helps. Explain that.
Yeah, I mean, time travel things get muddy, and I saw it on opening night, so like actually did think about like what if Thanos is not in the past, how does that affect things too that night, and I kind of forgot about that. So you bringing that back up again, it's my only issue with the movie is I feel like as much as they tried to explain it, the time travel thing still to me, there's a few holes in it where I'm like,
Right.
whatever. It was a
And
pretty good movie.
and I think there always will be holes in time travel plot because like I mean, if you think about how many things in movies that we do have real science behind and they still fuck it up in films, and then when you get into time travel, it's like it's not real. So because it's not real, like it's really hard to frame a story around it because you have to come up with a set of rules, and that can be really, really complicated. Um,
That was the other problem with it was they didn't follow a lot of their own rules because they were talking about the butterfly effect and don't talk into your past self and stuff. But then
But I think,
Nebula
but when
ends
they
up
were,
she
but
ends
when
up
they were
shooting
talking
herself.
about that, they were talking about how like that's from movies. That wasn't like the physicist saying don't do that.
Right.
That was all the
I
idiot characters that were like, oh, like in Back to the Future, they said do that, and everyone's like, what? Like everyone that was smart in the room was like, that's
right.
not a
But
thing.
also Nebula shot her past self. So
Right, but it's not.
depending on
Again,
which
it's
rules you apply
yeah,
by,
it's kind of an Infinity Stone thing. Like I said, they're not changing the past; they're changing their present.
which they have
So,
different
and
realities.
I mean, Nebula shot her past self in the present. So,
My question is, I mean, I know the answer is then you wouldn't have a movie, but if they were willing to take on Thanos with with a fully powered Infinity Gauntlet at the beginning of the movie, why wouldn't they just transport their time like through time to 2 days before he destroyed? Like,
well, then you wouldn't have a movie.
I mean, I know that's the answer,
No,
but
to be honest, I think they kind of addressed that, and it sounded to me like the snap, the thing that Thanos did, could not be undone from time travel. You could bring them back with another snap, but that was the impression that I got, and I think
wait, what do you mean?
I mean like the snap, half of people being erased, could not be undone through time travel.
Because it erased them all in time and reality.
Yeah, because it just took them out of reality. So that's why they had to get the stones together to bring them back. They didn't go back and like, oh, we prevented Thanos from doing the snap.
No, 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 no. I'm not talking about preventing
Yeah,
Thanos
he's
from doing
talking
the snap.
about
I'm
like
talking
going
about
to the
right the
garden
day
planet.
before he destroys the fucking stones. You go there, you fight him, you take the gauntlet, you snap it.
Oh, okay.
Here's
That's
my
a
Yeah, but then you
great
gotta
explanation.
point
but then you
because
gotta
they're
fight
all
him
in
with
one
6
place.
stones though.
Right, that's what that
But
Carrie has the point there though. That's the thing is
but they were
when
willing to do that before.
well,
No,
they
that
they
is
didn't realize when they
that is
got
a
there
good
though
point.
that the stones were gone. They knew there was an energy surge, but they didn't know. So the only reason they were able to defeat him and kill him and behead him was he didn't have the stones. So then
Right.
I don't know about that.
well,
Well, the first
after they
time
killed him, then they knew that the only way we defeated him is because he had no stones. He had gotten rid of them.
the
So
first
But they still could have killed him with the stones.
well, they
Is what I'm
wouldn't have
saying.
because the first time they probably thought the first time they fought him when he had all the stones, they lost, so we need a different plan. So we
Well,
need to
I
get them when
think
they're all
so. I
broken
got the
up.
feeling that they thought, and I mean it did kind of work, is we'll catch him by surprise because every time when he had the glove on, like they could do stuff, but you had to catch him by surprise, really work together. Um, so but then they didn't have the stones, so you're right. Like, why don't they go back in time, do that same thing, get the glove from him? I mean, that's a good point. And again, you're right. Like
It's
that's
a
you
good
just
point,
can't
but
think about that.
I just think
I mean,
it's
Unless they
safer
thought
to
it was just too
not
risky. Yeah, unless they
fight him
thought
with
it's just
all
way
6
safer to get the
stones.
stones when like, nobody powerful has them and they're like already kind of in our possession in the past, then like risk another fight with Thanos when he has a powered up Infinity
If
Gauntlet.
they had the full team, maybe they could go back, but with half the team gone, that might be too risky.
Right.
I think that's the only way they can explain that is I think that's why they came up with that whole plan is as much as
Less risky.
right, as much as yeah, you could just go back 2 days before. I think that's the biggest deterrent. He's got a full powered Infinity Gauntlet, and let's just get him while they were all in our possession in the past. So
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, for the convenience of them all being there, maybe
well, you gotta come up with a plot that can give you a movie, right? So
right,
Right,
right.
right.
I mean, that
exactly.
could have given you You could have
Well,
played
the
off
other thing
that.
they could have done. Okay, so here's the thing: is they had kind of written themselves into a little bit of a hole because the other thing they could have done is Thanos didn't destroy the. I think what we were all expecting is they would get the Infinity Gauntlet and reverse it, but we expected that would happen like late in the movie because they did the whole thing where Thanos destroyed the Infinity Stones. Because that happens so fast in the movie. I remember Snacks. I turned to you and said, "Well, roll credits." About 15 minutes into the film when they killed Thanos. And it's like, okay, where are they going to go from here? There's no stones and everything. Plus, it gave Ant-Man a lot to do. They gave Ant-Man a lot of shit in this movie, but he really accomplished a lot. He had the initial idea for going back in time, and he also saved the Hulk. He saved
Everybody
War
was wearing
Machine.
Ant-Man suits.
He stepped on that guy. Like, he did a lot.
Oh yeah, my favorite parts. I forgot about that.
Yeah, Carrie, I was coming back around to you.
But the last thing on Ant-Man, I thought it was funny. Like, everybody's wearing Ant-Man suits, and I'm like, oh, because they're all like the same design of mask and stuff, except for a couple of them.
Yeah, because traveling through the quantum realm, which is what they had to do, you have to like bring your own oxygen and everything. So yeah, they were basically
I
modifications of
did like that
Ant-Man
they pulled
suits.
him into a major character. But favorite parts was in the final battle. I really liked what you said about the Captain America bringing in the hammer. I like that. But the other one was when Scarlet Witch took on Thanos.
That was
Oh,
awesome.
that was awesome.
I
Yeah.
really
That
like
was a
that it
great
showed
scene.
her power because I was thinking, remember when I was watching Infinity War, I'm like, well, she can destroy an Infinity Stone. She should be able to destroy Thanos. But then I realized in Infinity War, she was fighting Thanos at the same time while destroying a stone. So she
Yeah,
just
she
doesn't have
really.
enough split
It was like
power.
everybody else was. Yeah, like her power was split, and it takes a lot for her to
Yeah.
destroy an
And I like
Infinity
that they
Stone. Obviously.
recognized that she was about to one shot Thanos in this
Oh yeah,
movie, except for when the
she's incredibly
ship brought in.
powerful. Yeah. No, she's a great like strong character. Like I think I wish that Carol Danvers was more like Scarlet Witch because Scarlet Witch is really she's grown. She's had a lot of loss. She's a really interesting actress and character to watch. I think she does a great job with it. Oh, that brings us right around to my least favorite part of the movie. I didn't say what my
Oh yeah, you
least
didn't do
favorite
your
part
least.
was.
Sorry, I cut you off. Go
It
ahead.
was the
I
girl
gotta do
power
mine too.
moment. Where
That's one of
Yeah.
mine too, but
it was
that's
the
not my
only
official.
thing. It was so cringy. It was so cringy. Like, and all of those, a lot of those characters. I almost said all, but then I forgot about Captain Marvel. A lot of those characters are great characters in their own right, and they all had a lot to do in this movie. And it wasn't like, oh, you're the female superhero, you have to do this. They all just played to their strengths. They did really amazing things. But that moment where, oh, we're covering her, and I was like, they're gonna do it. It's gonna be just the females. Like, and what the fuck is Mantis gonna do at that moment?
Yeah,
Like,
that was my question. Why is Mantis there? What is
It
she
was
gonna do?
so
Mantis
random and
needs to stay
Because
the
forced.
she,
fuck out
I
of
mean,
it.
she's pretty powerful, but she has to make contact with people in order to like
Well,
use her
Well,
mind
that's the
powers.
point.
she had her moment. She had her moment in Infinity War where she jumped on Thanos and she put him to sleep. And you're right, that was awesome. But in like a full scale battle like that, she's literally just a liability.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for girl power. I have two daughters, so I want them to grow up and have strong female role models and stuff. And I like that culture and our society is kind of shifting towards, you know, women can do a lot of things men can do to a degree, but that's what, like you said, kind of cringy. It almost does them a disservice that instead of
Right.
empowering women, I feel like that's just kind of like really
It's
gimmicky.
pandering. It was pandering.
It's
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
pandering,
so
yeah.
it was so cringy. And like I said, one of the most important characters. I mean, this movie was really a character study of Black Widow. Like we really. We've seen a lot of emotion from her before, but like, her trying to pick up the pieces after these last 5 years and having hope and then ultimately, making the ultimate sacrifice. Like, you want to talk about a female character that did so much in this film. And then, I mean, just like, Nebula and Gamora, like all
Ne-
of these people had so much to do.
yeah,
And then,
Nebula's arc in this movie was I thought was really great.
yeah, I mean, Nebula saving Iron Man and working with him and like, put like even the little thing where he's sleeping on the floor and she picks him up and puts him in the chair. It's like, wow, she has grown so much that she can care about other people in that way, where she was basically just a cyborg hateful killer when we first met her.
Yeah, I
That's
love that. I like that scene in the beginning where they're playing the little game.
Yeah, that was really funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say about the female thing was it's almost like I wouldn't say like a better way to, but it's almost like they're interpreting us as stupid. Like we can't recognize when a woman's being strong. Like Captain Marvel just came through and like literally one shotted Thanos' ship. But it's like, yeah, she's very strong. Every woman in this show has been very strong. We don't need a special scene like to recognize it. We already know it's there. It's like
It
it's
was
just
just
it's
Hollywood
too much.
cringe.
Like
It would
we
be like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like
it's
when you
like
get
saying
all
they're
the
like lesser and we got to bring them up. It's like we don't.
Right.
We
The only
obviously see their power.
the only thing I could think of for why they did that is, I mean, going through the initial what do you want to call this, phase one of Marvel, I think they call it, um, is they started with Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, these, the main male superheroes. And since then, the culture shift in our society is kind of pushed towards, like even some of these female roles that had a lot smaller roles in the earlier movies, they've given them a lot better arcs.
which that's
Um,
all fine. That's great.
right.
All
But I
well and
think that those the guys were shining a lot in this movie, fighting Thanos and stuff in the initial parts of the battle. So I don't know if there was kind of like a, hey, don't forget about the women thing, which,
but we didn't though, because we had just like, we saw Scarlet Witch do what she did basically by herself. We saw Carol Danvers just fucking one shot a battleship. It was just a weird, it was just for the moment, and it was
Some of
so they
the
could say, and I'm not really complaining, because this movie could have easily in this day and age been full of that. It could have been just top down like cringy moments all the time, and I feel like they really held back, so like props to them for that we only had, because I think that was the only time in the entire movie that I went, oh, that's so contrived.
Yeah.
well, that
Hmm.
moment and then my other least favorite moment. The last thing on that is that Scarlet Witch and Captain Marvel, those were probably the two most powerful characters in the movie, and
Oh,
they were
absolutely.
women.
Absolutely.
So
Scarlet Witch is hugely
I
powerful.
just felt like I didn't need the movie to tell me that. Like to bring all the women forward and be like they're strong. Like yes, I recognize the two most powerful people are women. Like you didn't need to
Yeah,
force
but it's
it.
not a lesson unless they beat you over the head with it, Carrie.
Hmm.
But
What was your other moment?
my least favorite moment was I already told you this, Kyle, was when Thanos said when he was talking about how he wanted to Earth is very stubborn and he's going to enjoy destroying the planet. And I'm like that's very not Thanos's character in the Infinity War.
He has a
Yeah.
he has a line in Infinity War that's similar, but it's not as bad, where he says, I forget what the line is, but it was so much better in Infinity War, where he says like, I'd be lying if I said that like I didn't enjoy this or something like that. Um,
Well, he
but
obviously understands like combat. He enjoys
he
combat. He enjoys fighting,
he
but
was
like
not as good in this
his
movie.
like core values were like, I don't really want to be doing this, but I have good intentions. It's just everybody else doesn't see it the way I see it, and I'm
Right.
really trying to help. But this was just like, no, you're being stubborn. I'm just going to kill you, and I'm going to enjoy it. I was like, that's like
Yeah,
too
he wasn't
childish for
nearly as
him.
good in this. And I'm not saying he was bad, but they didn't give him as much to do, because the first movie was almost Thanos's film. We learned so
Mhm.
much
Yeah.
about Thanos and his motivation, and we kind of sympathize with him, even though, he's obviously insane and what he's trying to do is not productive. But in this movie, I think it was more a study for, you know, um, Scarlet Witch and Captain America and Iron Man and Black Widow. And I think because of that, they didn't have really. They're like, okay, we get Thanos. Like he's just the bad guy. We need to pick up the pieces in this. But you're right. That was a cringy line.
I kind of felt in that moment, honestly, that there was a little bit of an undertone of him kind of being like, normally I'm on this mission for impartial, you know, um, whatever, saving the universe. Even though it seems dark, I'm doing it impartially. But you guys have been such a thorn in my side in trying to achieve that mission. Fuck all y'all. Like,
Right.
I'm
But
just
But
gonna.
the
the
thing
reason
is,
why it didn't seem earned, though. Yeah. No. Go ahead, Carrie.
I think Kyle was about to make my point. Is just like if this was like not a time thing and it like added his time of fighting us in Infinity War and he had to fight us all the way through this, like he didn't have enough time to get
To get so frustrated.
frustrated
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess that
with
makes sense.
us.
That just felt a little weird.
Other than, I mean, technically in that timeline, he still was, well, part of it was he had still suffered some setbacks from fighting them, like in the first Avengers movie in New York and that kind of stuff. I think. I don't know. The timeline's a little muddy because they went to 5 different times, but
Well,
yeah.
Brie
I mean, I guess you're right.
Brie Larson still can't act, by the way. I just wanted,
No.
while we were talking about it, she is so wooden, and I don't know. She's trying to do this stoic Captain Marvel, the actress that plays Captain Marvel. She's just so. I don't know what she's trying to do. I don't know what direction they're
She's
giving her
trying to
because
do.
Captain America can do stoic and pull it off, and like I don't know. She almost is like a Vulcan from Star Trek.
I might get our thing in trouble for this, but she's like trying to be that like lesbian without being a lesbian.
You're just blinded by the haircut.
Just that guy hating angry lesbian who has to like be mad at everybody.
But it's
But
not
it's
even
just- it's
mad.
just,
Like I
like,
would
so
love. She didn't even show that much
forced.
emotion. It's like she's really disconnected from everything.
Just trying to be like tougher than everybody there because she has to prove
Right.
something. I don't know what
She
she
What's
never-
the point of the haircut?
I don't know. Who knows? Maybe to
Lesbian.
show time went by. She never shows any vulnerability, like in this movie at all. She
No, she has to be
never. She just
strong.
comes in and is like both times. It's like, okay, I'm gonna kick Thanos' ass, and then the next time she comes in and she starts to kick Thanos' ass, and it's like, okay, you're just the person we call now when shit gets real, which is kind of I think bad for the Marvel Cinematic Universe overall.
That's the
The
one
sh-
thing. The other thing I didn't like about her character was the like, oh, Earth is kind of like my side project. Like, I know I understand she had to see all the other planets, but it's like, okay, but this is the one that's deciding the universe.
Well, they used to do that with. Well, that was before though. When she said that, they didn't have a plan for like undoing everything, so it was more
I
just like
thought-
our little fires that
She took her
we're-
time.
I
coming
thought it
back,
would have
though.
been really cool if like she if she had gone out, they were like, oh, she's like, I won't be back for a while, and she came back when they were doing the fight with Thanos, and she had like brought like the Nova Corps with her or something. I thought that would have
Oh,
been really
that would've
cool.
That would have been really cool if the Nova Corps could have taken out like if Thanos had like all his flying stuff. The Nova
Yeah.
Corps could have come in and dealt with that.
Wait, I thought the Nova Corps got destroyed.
They did, but that was 5 years ago. Like
Yeah,
they would
probably
rebuild just like
or the
everybody
Ravagers
else.
as well. They could bring the Ravagers too.
The Ravagers would have been cool. I thought the Nova
I-
Corps got nuked.
No, half of their
something.
planet, like Thanos, when he took the stone from them, he destroyed half
Wiped
their
out
planet,
half their
because that's what he does.
population.
Oh,
Which-
I thought he.
How
got the
bad do
whole
you feel
thing.
for the planets that Thanos came in, killed half the people, and then the snap happened and they lost half the people again? Like that sucks.
Yeah.
Too much
Technically,
math.
Thanos would have been able to mentally exclude them. You would think, right?
You think as part of the snap, like, okay, they've suffered enough. Do you think he was really putting that much thought into it, or do you think it was more like, hey, there's 50 quadrillion planets in the universe?
I mean, he had an
I mean,
Doesn't matter.
it's possible if he's only done like 100 planets, he could just mentally be like, those 100 planets, don't do it.
But here's the other
'Cause,
thing
like,
about it is
because there's that whole line with Hulk where like when he snapped his fingers, he's like, I really tried to bring her back. And it's like he
Right.
snapped. It's like it's in an instant. And you're like, he's like, I really tried to bring her back with the snap.
Right,
well, the other
exactly.
thing is whole planets would have been taken too, because if you actually did 50% of the actual universe, it would have.
It was by
Probably-
species. It was 50% by species. They
you
kind of
still
talk
lose whole
about.
planets. I mean, the Imperium of Man is huge.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, it's kind of something. It's very. What am I thinking of? Cthulhu. What's that author?
Lovecraft.
Lovecraft. It's very Lovecraftian when you start to try to wrap your head around, like, we can't even wrap our head around how many like planets and stars are in this galaxy, let alone you look at a universe where our galaxy looks like a star in a sea of stars, and you think about like he didn't wipe out like half of all life in our galaxy. He wiped half of all life in the entire universe, which is just like on a scale. I mean, you can't think about that too hard either, because you're like, why are all the Infinity Stones like right around our galaxy? But I guess I don't know. I guess they can travel from galaxy
Well,
to
it depends
galaxy.
on how far these planets are actually from ours.
Something.
They're everywhere, Carrie. They're everywhere. They're the
That's what I'm saying,
whole
maybe
universe.
with a- Well,
Something
was
that
Milky
that
Way
like I
the center of
think
the Big Bang?
that I think like presented a. I don't know if I would consider it a plot hole or a contrivance or something, but I always thought that like Doctor Strange's like portal magic only had like a limited distance to it, but apparently it doesn't. because why wouldn't they like bring more reinforcements with them to Titan if that's the case? Or why
Right.
wouldn't they go straight to go back to Earth with the? You know what I mean?
I
I
mean,
don't know.
if
He's like
it's
bending reality. I'm not really sure what the limits of his power are.
I'd like to know that.
These
it
are all
depends.
things you got to just chalk it up to. It's a superhero
No.
movie, so it's not
No.
going to be.
It's
But
It-
that's
we're gonna make this science one day, okay? And we're the pioneers.
It's a super-
no. But I'm saying like if you're gonna throw a line in Infinity War where he says we're outmanned, like, and then in the next movie
right.
travel multiple thousands of light years away or whatever to Earth, where he could have gotten reinforcements from to begin with, then it matters to the plot.
It does. You know what are two things that I was thinking about that would have been really awkward just for like I don't know the galaxy for all these like villains that are have different goals. The first one that I thought was what was Thor's sister? It was Helena.
Hela?
Hela. It would have been really funny if like Hela succeeded. She beat Thor and she took over. Like Asgard wasn't destroyed by Ragnarok and all that, and like she's this huge power, and then just instantly like half of everything gets destroyed. It'd be really confusing for her, or like she just gets destroyed. And then the other thing I thought would have been really funny for Thanos, like going back even farther, is if Peter Quill's dad had like succeeded in his plan of like, he's been seeding himself all over the universe to like take over everything. And when that was happening, I just pictured like Thanos being like, what the fuck? Like all of a sudden, his planet or wherever he is, like all of a sudden this, these plants starts to grow and it's like him spreading out everywhere. I don't know. You think about like, what if some of these other bad guys had won? It would have completely thrown Thanos's plan right out the window. I just got a kick out of thinking about that. Like, oh man, sorry Thanos. Like, good luck finding the Infinity Stones now.
Right.
But
Or like I mean, again, it's kind of like what if like
Thanos is inevitable.
and what if like Doctor Strange is like, all right, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna put this one here, this one here, this one here, and we're all just gonna hide. And it's like
right forever.
Thanos can spend another 100 years or whatever looking for it. He never fucking finds them. He dies like retiring as an old man, knowing that he fucking failed. I think that would be more satisfying than him, because I actually loved his death because he just realizes he's lost and he just sits down, just like
yeah, that was a very Thanos thing to do. It's like
Yeah.
almost a Bushido, type
Yeah.
idea of just like acceptance. Like
But you
he
could also
tried,
see
he
that,
gave it the
like,
old college try.
You could also see that like he was glad it was over with,
so
just so he didn't have
Like
to deal.
yeah, like the
'Cause
struggle.
his plan was gone. He's like, you know what? I'm
So-
tired.
so did the snap at the end that Iron Man does, that killed everybody, right? That wiped them from existence, correct? It didn't put them back in their place in time,
No,
right?
For some reason, Sarah was thinking that. She's like, no, it just sent them back in time. I was like, no, they dissolved. It did the exact same thing that Thanos did.
Yeah, he wiped them from existence, right?
Yeah, he wiped. I'm guessing he wiped Thanos and all of Thanos's followers.
But you can't wipe them from existence, otherwise they wouldn't be there.
No, because again, you're thinking about traditional time travel. The Infinity Stones go beyond that. They're not
Right.
changing the past.
But Kyle, if they snapped him from existence, then
No, they're not snapping him from existence. I'm sorry, I said that poorly. It's just straight up killing them, just like
Okay, that's what I
Thanos
said, 'cause
killed
I'm like,
half
what-
of everyone.
they didn't. Yeah, because they straight up killed him. Because if they
Yeah,
snapped
it
him
didn't
from
really.
existence, they
It
wouldn't be able to bring
just
anybody
killed
back.
them all the same way Thanos killed everyone. And I'm guessing he just like his wish, if you want to think of it as a wish, was like, I want Thanos and all of his followers to die or disappear, or
I did have one problem with that scene. Not Captain. Fuck, I'm a little drunk. When Iron Man pulled all the Infinity Stones off of his hand, I'm
Yeah.
like, they come off the gauntlet that easy.
I mean, he built the gauntlet. I mean, it's not.
Yeah,
it's,
in that
that's not the
situation, it's
traditional
not the
gauntlet.
other gauntlet. It's a gauntlet based on Iron Man's nano.
Yeah, his pack.
But I thought that I thought all the stones, like when because you saw him putting the one back on after he punched Captain Marvel, and it was like fusing with all the other ones, and I'm like, don't they all kind of link together when they're together?
Yeah, I'm
But
guessing I kind of waved that away as like I'm guessing they had the idea of a quick release, basically, for if Thanos gets his hand on it, he would be able to get it. I mean, even his like
That's true. I
like
wish
Webb
they just
said,
maybe
the
I wish they
nanotech.
did like a little button that he pushed like a
That's
little
going to
scene
be
so
like
you
in
could
the
get-
deep track
just fix it.
director commentary. They're going to talk about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because his new gauntlet, like his new gauntlet, just formed like the one he had on his regular suit formed to just accept the stones.
I also
So
thought
like
it
he
was
had
kind of
obviously done
fun.
that programming.
I also thought it was kind of interesting that they were able to build one when Thanos had to have one forged for him. Like I
Well,
thought it was like a special,
was-
like it's like a special
right.
thing that had to be forged in like the heart of like a dying star, and it's like,
The
oh,
Peter
Iron Man could just
Dinklage.
make one.
Yeah, the Peter Dinklage forge. I mean, Iron Man's good at making
Well, they
stuff.
also
He's
weren't
very
they
handy.
weren't sure about it working at all. I mean, that's why
Probably
they
it
put
was
it on the
probably
Hulk.
it's probably
Well-
made out of what's it called, vibranium.
Well, the other thing
Right.
that I imagined, Snacks, is that I think that's we could also kind of retcon in or just kind of like headcanon in that's why it did so much damage to like maybe the one that's forged in the heart of a dying star protects you a little bit from the energy, like even though you still have to be incredibly powerful to wield it, especially if you're doing like such an
Mhm.
immense thing. But like maybe that's the thing, is like the Iron Man one probably isn't nearly as good as the one that was forged in the star,
Which that brings me to a point that I mean, this might be petty of me, but when um when Hulk took all the stones at once, like he has regenerative abilities, it damn near took his arm off. And then like back in the first Guardians of the Galaxy, it took like 5 of them to hold one stone. And then Iron Man in the end can take all 6 and not just get instant nuked. And I was like, call me petty, but I'm like, okay, I see why they had to do it, but I was still like,
right,
he would just be incinerated.
yeah. And again, I don't know, it's his suit's used to dealing with energy.
Like I said,
don't
call
know.
me petty, but I just noticed that.
Yeah. Well, also I thought about that when Hawkeye had the Spirit Stone just in his glove, and I was like, I guess the
I
Spirit
noticed that
Stone is when
too.
it's in kind of a like resting state. I mean, it's not the Power Stone or anything like
It's
that.
a Soul
I
Stone, not the
assumed
Spirit.
the Soul
Soul
Stone
Stone,
was
yeah.
related to the fact that it's like, okay, you gave me a sacrifice,
It's
here I am,
magic.
kind of thing. It's like
Almost
a magic
like
thing.
magic. Yeah,
Right.
I'm willing
You
to
know?
accept that.
Right, like the Soul Stone, you sacrifice the soul
Versus-
so you can wield it safely, kind of a thing. So
Right.
Versus
even-
like the Power Stone, which would like disintegrate
Just-
you.
Yeah, exactly. See, I'm very willing to accept
but
that.
either way, Iron Man still had the Power Stone plus everything. So
No, yeah.
He did, but I mean, they did design a gauntlet. Like, he's not an idiot. Like, they're messing around with time travel and quantum realms and stuff. I mean, I'm sure he could,
I know, but I'm just being a
It's
because it almost
it's fine.
killed the
I'm
Hulk.
fine with it. They weren't going to go back to Peter Dinklage land. Really off-putting giant Peter Dinklage.
That would have been interesting if it just like Iron Man tried it and it just straight up killed him, and then like
It
Hulk
didn't
had,
accomplish anything.
and then
It just
like
blows
Hulk
up.
had to pick
Movie
it up
over.
and like do it again, and then
we just do
like-
the time travel repeatedly until it works. Well, overall, like, any last impressions? Anything else you guys wanted to talk about?
it was better than the Last Jedi.
Oh my god! I, honestly, just overall, it was very satisfying. It was a very entertaining movie. I was never bored, even though it was 3 hours long. I was very invested the entire time. Like, this is the way that you kind of end an era, and we're gonna see the difference when we go see Rise of Skywalker, and we all walk in and we don't care about any of the characters.
That's
I
what-
really
Gamora,
liked the. Oh, go ahead.
I was just making a side joke. Gamora's with the Force Awakens Skywalker.
Right. Well, one of the things that was one thing I'm confused by. Where did Gamora go?
yeah, I'm sure. Well, Peter Quill obviously is looking for her, in the end of the movie on the map. So that could be part of the plot point for Guardians 3.
Well, I'm sure it will be, but
Well,
my question
great.
is, how did she get off the planet?
She could have either taken that shuttle that poops out of the back of Peter's ship. That was what
That's what
Rocket was in
Okay.
earlier when they were
Possibly,
flying
yeah.
around. Or now I don't remember. Correct me if I'm wrong. But when all of Thanos' stuff got like disappeared, did his ships disappear too?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I was gonna say
Yeah.
like maybe she hopped on a shuttlecraft, like the ship crashed and it wasn't destroyed. But if all of his like vehicles got erased too, then that's obviously not. So I would say the best bet is she stole that little ship that goes out. I always forget the name of his vessel. What is the
The
Guardians
Milano.
ship? The Milano.
I have a
Yeah.
feeling they're going to have some other kind of stupid explanation for it besides that. So, but we'll see.
Or they'll just never address it. Like, I feel like that might never
Right.
get addressed of how she left the planet.
I mean, could you imagine if she had taken she had taken one of Thanos' ships before the battle was over, and it just disappears in space, and she dies.
Well, I'm kind of surprised she had that moment of like, because obviously you can tell she was already thinking about betraying Thanos and all that. And
Mhm.
I'm kind of like once Nebula was like, "Oh, we become sisters," blah blah blah. Like she jumps right on board of like, "Yeah, like let's go fight Thanos." But that is a good question of like,
Just love
where
trumps
did
all.
she go? Why didn't she hang out?
Right. Yeah. So
Yeah, I don't know. Okay.
I enjoyed it. I liked it. It was a 10 out of 10 movie.
Yeah, it
9
was.
out of 10. I mean, I had complaints, so it can't be a 10 out of 10. Nothing's
Yeah,
ever
I
10
would
out of
say
10.
it was as good
And
as I think it could have been.
I feel like we needed
My
that
last
because there was a
point-
lot of disappointments throughout the last year in movies with a lot of the big stuff.
Yeah, it's been rough.
Definitely
Go ahead,
Jurassic
Webb.
Park.
So last point, they're totally are setting up for their streaming service and stuff with some of the things they did in the end too, because there is supposed to be like a Scarlet Witch show on their streaming service, I think, and there's also going to be um, a Winter Soldier and Sam, who apparently now is going to be Captain America 2.0.
Does
that
anyone want to watch Falcon, Captain Falcon? I know that's not his name.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Bucky should have been Captain America.
Bucky should have been
Falcon.
Captain America. Nobody in the country wants to see him. I mean, he's not a bad character. He's a very small
think
ancillary
in the
character, and I
comics,
don't know why
though-
he got the shield.
In the comics, both of them take up the shield at different points, and I think
do
Falcon
they?
has the wings and the shield in one set of comics.
my only issue is that Falcon is not a super soldier.
He's a
Right.
medic. He was a medic. Like that's
But-
what he does.
That was my biggest issue with that. Is I think I'm interested to
I-
see what they do with that, because I mean, I thought about it. It's like he's not as strong as either of the other two, so he can fly around with his gizmos.
But
He's kind of like
lots
an
of people
Iron
can
Man in
fly
that
around.
regard, but
Yeah.
because he relies on gadgets. He's like like a Batman. Like he relies on gadgets and stuff to fight. He's
What's
not
weird
just
about that is he relies on gadgets. You're 100% right, but it's not like he's inventing them. It's all just government technology that he no longer has. Like he can keep his wings repaired, but it seems like that's it.
He doesn't have any training to manipulate the shield or the strength in the way that Captain
Oh
America
yeah, he's gonna have
do
no
it.
idea what he's doing with the shield.
Bucky could do it because he has the arm
Yeah,
and the training.
yeah. I thought Bucky would have been a better choice.
Doesn't he have super soldier serum in him too?
No,
Yes,
No?
but he
it's
does have a
just
little
he
bit.
had
it's just the
he
arm.
had some sort of experiments done on him by the Russians or whatever, but
But they were
I don't know what it was.
they were never successful because the thing that people undervalue Captain America. Captain America is the gamma radiation in the serum that made him is what the Hulk was trying to what like Bruce Banner was trying to replicate, and he fucked up when he created the Hulk. So it's like the gamma radiation that created Bruce Banner is also what created Captain America. Like he's more powerful than people give him credit for.
I never underrated him because he's my favorite.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites too, just if for no other reason than because of his character. And I'm glad he had a lot to do in this movie.
I just like that he's black and white.
I just wish that they would have had him have more conversations with Bucky.
Yeah,
And maybe we'll get that in like deleted scenes or something, but like
yeah, maybe at the end it would have been good. I mean, there were
Well,
just so
I
many
th-
characters. Like this, no movie in history has had this many main characters. It's insane.
yeah.
Maybe they'll address it in that TV series. Maybe he'll have a couple guest spots or something, or they'll talk about something with him. I don't know. So we'll see.
Maybe.
I guess that was what I was bringing up for our last point. Is I was like, I'm reserving judgment on some of those kinds of things because Disney obviously wants to pull. They're going to pull all their movies off of Netflix and start their own like Disney Plus streaming service
Oh,
or
yeah,
whatever
it's
it's called,
already-
with
already
original
doing it.
content, including some of these characters who are going to,
Right.
some of them I guess are
That
going to
they've
move away from
established.
movies and they're just going to be TV series now. So
Yeah. Well, okay, so real quick before we end this podcast, one thing I wanted to talk about is and we've talked about it before, but the thing that will fuck up the MCU is adding the X-Men. Because
Yeah.
in the realm of the X-Men, in the universe of the X-Men, there are literally millions of superhumans scattered around the world. And if you do that, you make characters like, Iron Man and Captain America so much less special. They're X-Men that are just so powerful. The only characters we have that would even be on the level would be like Captain Marvel and Scarlet Witch and all of that. And I'm like, the two universes are just not compatible. If
Oh.
if you throw X-Men in, it is going to be ruined.
Well, and then the other
Unless they
question,
change it to where there's only like
You bring
one mutant in
Deadpool
a
in.
billion people. That's the
and,
only way.
and the other question is like how do you bring them in, because like there's all this history with Magneto and Xavier and all that stuff, like that's like central to their characters, and it's like how do you write that into the MCU
How do you
where they're
retcon
not
that
they
in?
retcon
Yeah.
that in, because they've already fucked that up with Captain Marvel, with the event, like
Right.
Nick Fury creating the Avengers, and he says it in which one? I think it was in one of the Avengers movies. Maybe it was it Age of Ultron or the first one or whatever. I think it was the first one, where he says the reason why we're testing these weapons is because of Thor. We didn't know we weren't alone in the universe
Right.
until Thor came along. It's like, oh, well actually in the 90s
Right.
we met
Just,
Captain
just
Marvel.
kidding. Well, I hate prequels, and just out of principle, I think stories are best when they're moving forward. And I think you start a story when things get interesting. And the whole idea of, number one, when you go back to do a prequel, now you create all of these continuity problems, because especially for a film that is collaborative and have so many people working on it. Like with a book, it's a little bit different. You can go tell earlier stories, but when it's a movie, they always fuck up the continuity, and it also takes away, because you're like, oh, let's go see what happens. Like, I wonder if Carol Danvers will be able to overcome this threat. It's like, well, Earth still exists, so like I know going into the movie, and I know at some level, like the Avengers are going to win, but I just think it's such an ass backwards way of storytelling. Of, let's tell an awesome story and then go back and tell it before it was interesting, and we'll tell the early history. It's like, if it was really that good, then you should have started there and moved forward. And we've seen like so many times Star Wars, Star Trek, like Star Trek with Enterprise and now with Discovery, where these prequels, they just don't land. Like number one, it's fucking up continuity, and number two, it's hard to care about it because we know where everybody ends up. So I don't find that interesting storytelling from my.
Also, there's always those things where people bring in something like something that we've come to see from this character, and they're like, for example, like the Han Solo thing, how he got his name. Like, did anybody really wonder?
That movie
You know
was
what I
one
mean?
of the worst offenders. Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like something like that in a prequel just bugs me.
I will say that of trying to string all those movies together and keeping the continuity, Marvel did the best job of any best
Well, they
job
they
because
did an
they were
amazing
over
job.
ambitious in how many movies they
You're
could
you're
do.
talking about, what is it, 20 films now, or 21 films in 10
22.
years?
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
gonna be
22 films.
holes, but like
Well,
I agree with the Han Solo. Like I watch it, I'm like, this is a good movie, but there's just too many holes.
a big part of why it worked is because they weren't constantly going back and doing prequels. Like, they've been moving the story forward, which is what they should be doing. And until, they had to introduce Captain Marvel, well, they didn't have to do it this way, but they decided to introduce her like back in the 80s or early 90s, whatever it was. Um, that was the first time that they did that. And what do you know? Like, with a lot of people, that movie fell really flat. Like, I'm sure a lot of people will prefer seeing her in this because we're actually moving the story forward and we're not retconning all this stuff in the past. All right. Well, unless anybody else has any other points, I think we'll wrap it up.